We welcome you all to this gathering this afternoon on this beautiful day. So thankful that you can be here. I know that there are a number of other people that are with us in spirit today, not here physically. We have gathered today to remember and celebrate, probably to laugh and cry and give thanks to God for an incredible person in Beth Jamison. As you know, she was, as we'll soon talk about, she was a teacher and friend and colleague and so much more in so many ways. My name is Doug Sonnenberg. I got to know Beth. I served as a youth pastor just a couple of years ago in the 1990s in Centerville. And so we had some adventures together there. And so just thought I'd say a couple of things to get us started. As you all know, Beth just had an incredible way to lead people to give their best, to love each other, to serve others, to have a real love for music. And of course, her faith was incredibly important to her as she loved Jesus Christ. We are here to remember and celebrate and give thanks. I think it's fair to say that this time, this day, this remembrance and celebration came a lot earlier than we certainly expected or even desired. And today we are called, among the many things, we're called to trust that only God knows the number of our days and that God in his sovereignty, even when we are perhaps saddened at the departure, God is still good. And one of the ways we see that, Jesus promised that blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And so you and I, as a part of this gathering today, are fulfilling part of the divine promise we've been given as we comfort, encourage, and support one another. Let me share just a few memories that I have of Beth Jamison. I was just beginning seminary and serving as a youth pastor, and I found at each church that I've been to, there's somebody in the history of that church that's just had an incredible impact on the people there and the people around there. And at Centerville United Methodist Church, Beth J was certainly that person. I learned right away, anybody that can get 20 to 30 teenagers to come every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning to sing. I knew God was up to something with this special lady. Beth J was intense. You all know that. She was passionate in who she was, what she did, what she believed in. To be honest, as a young pastor, she kind of scared me at times. She could be intimidating, and she was tough. I never had to really guess how she felt about things because we got her right out in the open. But she knew the Bible really well. I had just started reading it a couple years earlier. But, through that strong leadership and that strong personality, the Holy Spirit always came shining through. It was always tempered with love and grace. I found she had an infectious smile and kind of that unique giggle that she had when she was excited about things. And she just loved to see what was possible and what God was up to. And man, did she love, I always said, she loved those kids, which is many of you gathered today. I found she was kind of mama bear and teddy bear all wrapped up into one. She would do anything she felt that God was calling her to do to help the youth, the young people, the kids know music, know what it meant to serve other people, know what it meant to watch out for and love one another, and certainly and to know Jesus as well. You and I know that she wasn't perfect. She would have been the first to say that. In fact, I imagine she'd look around today and go, you guys are ridiculous. But we loved her so. And so, Jesus said the most important thing to do in life was to love God and to love others. And I think Beth did that and demonstrated that so well. And so today, as we get started, I'd just like to offer a prayer to kind of just ask God to bless our time together, that it would be a time where we are lifted up, where we remember, where we see the importance of life as the way God has designed it. So if you would, let's pause and pray. God, as we gather today, Lord, you've given us another beautiful day. And what an incredible place this is where we can gather. Lord, there's lots of love in this place, and as we take some time to remember Beth Jamison, Lord, in some ways our hearts are certainly heavy, and there is an element of sadness, and yet there also is the understanding that it's okay in the sense that you've made it clear this life on earth is temporary, but life in you and with you is eternal. We know she's in heaven, Lord, just experiencing joy beyond measure. Lord, I pray you'd bless this time, that we would remember and honor Beth Jamison, that we would give glory to you, and that we would encourage being with one another as well. So that when the time comes for this celebration, when it comes to a close, may we continue, Lord, the legacy that Beth Jamison demonstrated so well, and that was to be mindful of the ways and the gifts that God has given you, to use them to make certainly this world a better place. And so, Jesus, we thank you for who she was, who she is in our hearts, and for this time today. We pray all these things, Jesus, in your name. Amen. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samantha, and I am Beth's oldest niece. This is my sister Andrea and my sister Alexa. First and foremost, our family appreciates the celebration that has been put together today, and we want to thank all of you for coming to remember Beth's life and legacy. It means the world to our entire family. We know everyone here has a Miss J memory, and we've loved getting to hear those stories over the past few months. I thought I would take a moment and share one of my favorite memories too. For those of you that were around back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Beth would bring the choir down to Forest Fair Mall, as it was known then, around Christmas time. My favorite time of year is Christmas, and each time there was a Christmas concert at the mall, my mom would take us out of school to go. For some reason, one song always brings me back to those concerts, and every time I hear it, I think of Beth. You may have seen my shirt, and if not, it's Feliz Navidad. I will never forget the joy she had as I watched her direct the choirs and musicals here at Springboro. It's an impression that will stay with me forever. She loved what she did, but more importantly, all the people she got to do it with. She loved you all as much as she loved music. Music and her students were always her passion. While she may not be here in person to direct the choir concerts and the school musicals or take on some wild overnight set design project, we know her presence will absolutely be felt. Her legacy lives on in this community and through each of you that has had the chance to experience her magic. The Jamison family again extends our sincerest thanks to all of you for being here today, and we would like to leave you with this one lyric from mine, favorite musicals. I've heard it said that people come into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we are led to those who help us most to grow. And if we let them and we help them in return, well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I'm who I am today because I knew you. Thank you all again for being here today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary McCarty, and I grew up across the street from Beth on Robert Ann Drive in Kettering. And I'll never forget the day the Jamisons moved in, and I noticed a cute little girl about my age with a ponytail riding her tricycle around the block with great purpose and determination. I hope she will be my friend, I told myself. And luckily for me, Beth became one of our little gang of 5-year-old girls. And I have to smile when I think about those days now and how early our characters and our passions are formed, because I grew up to be a writer, and I wrote the neighborhood plays, which Beth naturally directed, and we coerced our hapless little pals, Claudia and Suzanne and Becky and Vicky, to play the parts. Beth also staged an entire production of The Wizard of Oz in the Jamison's basement with our friend Brian delivering a pitch-perfect performance as the Wicked Witch, and I'm sure Beth's mom's ears are still ringing over that one. But it was just one of many adventures that we had in the Jamison household where Beth's wonderful, warm parents, Jan and Dan, served as an extra set of parents for us all. It was just that kind of neighborhood. Robert Ann Dryback, well, it still is, a very large circle. And in the 1960s, there were 100-plus kids who ran the block from dawn to dusk and graciously allowed our parents to cohabitate with us. The parents called themselves the Robert Ann Rowdies, and they lived up to that nickname. We kids would press our noses against the glass of our bedroom windows and listen as they laughed and talked and danced late into the night. In the summers, the neighbors banded together to build floats to compete in the Kettering Holiday at Home Parade, and we kids were given the all-important job of stuffing the floats with crepe paper. My favorite was the year that we created a fire-breathing Puff the Magic Dragon who roared down Far Hills Avenue. It truly was a magical neighborhood, and I think I will never write that best-selling memoir because my childhood was just too happy and idyllic. And, since losing Beth, I miss so much that kind, loving, funny, whip-smart person that she is. But I'm also reminded of the writer who once said, our childhood friends are the custodians of our history. And the loss of a childhood friend leaves a friendship-shaped hole in our personal narratives. You can't replace the person who debated with you about who was the cutest Beatle. I was a George girl, and if I'm remembering correctly, Beth was a Paul girl. Or the person who argued about who had the cutest baby sister. And in Beth's opinion, Danny won that competition hands down. I'm not going to argue with that. But you can't replace the person you called boys with for the first time. And yes, again, that also happened in Jamison's basement, and I hope the statute of limitations is out on that one, Jan. So all of us here today know that a friend like that, Beth, is simply irreplaceable. But what I found most comforting in the past few months has been reading the tributes that you students have been making to Beth, and it made me understand I was wrong to focus on the past merely, and that her legacy will extend many decades in the future. It makes me think of the James Hilton novel, Goodbye, Mr. Chips. At the end of his life, the British school teachers asked if he ever had any children. Thousands of them, he replied. I know Beth felt that way about her students. I was particularly struck by the words of Susan Schrader-Matsko, who wrote in the memorial website, Beth was a genuinely lovely woman who touched many students' lives, and mine was just one of those she impacted with her incredible gift of encouraging her students to believe in themselves. In junior high school, I was an outgoing student, but also a follower, and someone who was shy in sharing my talent or vulnerability. I remember being in Miss Jamison's show choir group and being asked to sing a solo for a holiday performance, and I was beyond nervous to take part in it. In preparation for the performance, she worked with me at her piano and oftentimes quipped that I was singing pastel pink, but had it in me to be royal deep purple as a comparison to sing louder, courage up, and be bold enough to share any talents given with the world. This little phrase has stuck with me throughout my adult life, through job interviews, fundraising speeches, motherhoods, and even on my wedding day before walking down the aisle. I have thought to myself, harness your royal purple. And I am so grateful to Ms. Jamison for giving that to me and sharing her kindness. The world is a bit duller now that she is no longer in it, but I am so grateful to have been touched by her life and to know everyone in the heavens is singing their royal deep purple because she is there. So as a side note, I bought the house I grew up in, and the morning after Beth died, I looked outside my window and saw the most glorious sunrise that I've ever seen. And this is probably fanciful on my part, but I couldn't help thinking it was a sign from Beth that she is still with us and that she will always be with us. And yes, in that sunrise, I believe I detected a hint of royal deep purple.
Jenny Bowling. I first met Beth when I was about 14 years old, and she was probably around 23. Our church had hired her almost straight out of college to teach our youth choir. I remember her as being so much full of sparkle and so much fun, and she just kind of made all of the kids want to be a part of the choir. It was such fun that a lot of our friends started coming from other churches so they could also participate. Beth was able to combine the joy of church choir along with the scripture and led many of us to a more spiritual path. One of our favorite things that Beth would do with the church choir was she would take us away for a week on a summer choir tour. Every spring, we would start practicing the new music, have car washes, sell pizza and subs to make money for the trip, and then when summer rolled around, she'd load us all up on a tour bus and take us to a different part of the United States. One year it was Michigan, one year out west, Virginia Beach, and many other choir tours after I had graduated. We would stay in different churches or at congregants' houses and visit with them. It was such fun touring the states and meeting new people and making strong friendships within our church community. She had this ability to bring out the best in all of us. It wouldn't matter how good you were at singing. She just seemed to have this ability to think you could sing the part, and then you kind of did. Fast forward 30-some-odd years, and me and my family have moved back into town. I would come into Woolly Bully to get yarn for my projects and chat with Beth. After my mom passed away, Beth was at our house after the funeral. She was always great about supporting all of her kids, even after we were adults. I started working at the shop shortly after when she had an opening and offered me a spot. It was great working with her and getting to know her as an adult and forming another layer to our friendship. I really loved working with her. She would literally let me offer any class I wanted to try, and I always felt like she was right beside me, cheering me on and supporting my decisions. We had some of the best conversations at the shop as well. I guess that I was lucky enough to have her as a mentor as a youth and then a friend as an adult. An interesting note about the shop, I once asked Beth what made her buy a yarn store. She told me that she figured Springboro could support a yarn store, and she wasn't wrong. She turned what was just a shop into a safe space for us to gather, make new friends, and share our ups and downs. I know that many of her customers have made a lot of new friends and support systems they wouldn't have had without the shop. I recently received one of the nicest emails from a yarn rep. I had emailed to let her know about Beth's death. She said that she had always loved coming to the shop to talk with us. She thought of Beth and I as Batman and Robin. I was thinking about that on the drive home that evening, and I figured that if I was going to be a Robin, I couldn't have asked for a better Batman.
Take away the melodies, take away the songs I sing, take away all the lies and all the songs you let me write. Does the man I am today say the words you need to say? Let them see you in me. Let them hear you when I speak. Let them feel you when I sing. Let them see you. Let them see you in me. Who am I without your grace? Another smile, another face, another breath, a grain of sand, passing quickly through your hand. I give my life and offer it. Take it all, take everything. them see you in me. Let them hear you when I speak. Let them feel you when I sing. Let them see you. Whoa, let them see you in me. Let them hear you when I speak. Let them feel you when I sing. Let them see you. Let them see you in me. Let them see you in me.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Malone. I had the opportunity to work with Beth Jamison for approximately 13 years, from about the year 2000 until 2013. In that time period, I served as Springboro High School principal, and she was our vocal music teacher. When I think back to our time together, there's obviously many, many thoughts that come into my mind. Probably one at first was the degree of growth that Springboro High School experienced during this time period. In 2000, we had approximately 700 students here at the high school. We were growing. We had our second year in this building. We had just moved in a couple of years before that. But we were experiencing a tremendous amount of growth. But it was interesting to remember that Springboro wasn't always large, and we weren't always what we are today. For example, when Beth was trying to build a music program, she was the music instructor for vocal music. She had no accompanist. She relied upon students. She relied upon parent volunteers. It was several years before we were able to have a paid accompanist and then ultimately a second teacher. We had no grand piano. The first year or so, Beth operated with an old upright that had been moved from the previous building and a keyboard. So one of our first goals together was to upgrade the music program by getting a grand piano. And because of the work that she put forth, the vision that she had, in 1 year we accomplished that purpose. And other items of growth for Beth during this period, as the school grew by about 75 to 100 students per year, we saw everything about the music program grow. 1 year after she and I started working together in 2001 was the fateful day of 9/11/2001. From that point until my retirement in 2013, she, myself, and other people put together a tremendous program for the students, our annual 9/11 commemorative assembly. By the time that I was about to depart, through Beth's leadership and others, we were incorporating about 600 students into this presentation. So she grew with our program. And that is always a key indicator of a professional. They grow as an individual, and the students grow under them. When we talk also about what makes and made Beth Jamison an outstanding instructor, if we polled the audience here today, we would get a variety of responses. Many of the responses would come forth somewhere along the line is that she cared about me, she cared about my child as a person. This caring goes so far when you're an instructor, when you're a teacher, when you are trying to convey messages, techniques, etc., to your students. It isn't the skill necessarily that a person presents, it's the relationship that she is able to develop and was able to develop with her students. Every student who she's had, students here today, students from the last 13, 15 years or 20 years, when you ask them, what was it about Beth Jamison that you remember, it will be something along that line. The people who are speaking today invariably are referred to as friends. They were friends. There was a relationship there. It wasn't necessarily technical in nature as much as it was a relationship. And whenever you have a situation where you have a relationship with a student, with a person, that is when education can truly occur. So my time with Beth Jamison was one that I treasure. She was always someone who was willing and able to do anything that we asked for the betterment of Springboro High School. And so at this time, I'd like to kind of switch gears just a little bit, but tell you a little bit of a humorous story that I remember about Beth near the end of a school year. Those of you that know Beth and worked with her knew that she was a tremendously productive person, but she wasn't always necessarily the most organized, and sometimes she honestly forgot things. The situation is this, if you can kind of draw a mental picture. It was a teacher's work day at the end of a given school year, so there were no students around at this time. We had just installed here at the high school a top-notch video system, cameras in the parking lots, cameras in different locations, so we could provide security for our cars, for our vehicles, for our people as they were coming and going. Well, the school day, around 7 o'clock in the morning, it was about ready to start. Again, no students here, but the work day was about to begin. Beth came into the office and was very upset, and she says, "Dr. Malone, someone stole my car." And I said, "What?" She said, "Someone has stolen my car." She said, "I parked it out where I always park it. There were a couple other cars around. I came into my room. I go back out to my car to get some items out of it, and the car was gone." And so I said, "Well, okay, we'll check this out." I mean, I have to admit, it was pretty unusual to think of a car theft in the middle of the school parking lot and in daylight. But it could happen. It certainly could happen. So we started checking our cameras. First of all, we went out there, no car. So I agree. Beth, your car is not here. There were other cars around, but her car was not there. So we started checking the cameras. And you have to, again, to kind of envision this. On the camera that was focusing on the parking lot at like 6:30 in the morning, her car was there, as well as other cars. But then as time progresses, we see the car slowly start to move. It is creeping very, very slowly down the parking lot. And you that are familiar with the parking lot know that there's a significant grade, and it goes ultimately down to the stadium. And so we're watching this car slowly go down the hill. And as it's going down the hill, there were certain obstructions. There were light poles, for example. There were a few other cars in the parking lot. And we kept thinking, what is it going to hit? Is it going to run into a car? Is it going to run into a light? What's it going to hit? And what was kind of interesting too is that periodically individuals would pull up in the parking lot, get out of their car, come into the building, oblivious to the fact that here is a car creeping down the parking lot with no driver. And so ultimately, it goes out of camera number one's range. And then we go to camera number 2, and we pick it up. And same thing. Car is going down the parking lot very slowly. Periodically, we will see cars running through the parking lot, some in front, some behind it. Again, the other drivers having no idea that this car is driverless. So ultimately, the car ended up clear down near the concession stand. It hit the curb, so the abutment curb, so it stopped on its own. No damage was done, but we found Beth's car. And what had happened in her urge to get in the building, she had gotten out of the car, turned the key off, but left it in gear, and gravity did its job on this car. So again, we had fun as a staff when we were viewing this in our wrap-up meeting that day, and it kind of set a really good tone for that year and the next tone, and it always gave us something to come back toward Beth and say, Beth, you remember that time? You know. So again, she was a wonderful lady. She just contributed so much to Springboro High School and so much to our community. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to share a couple of events. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Jen Baumeister, and I was a student of Beth's when she was first here. So it was the late 80s, the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl, and Springboro was a much smaller town. My dad had been diagnosed with leukemia. He was admitted to Kettering Hospital, and our lives were upheaved. Daily, my sister, my mom, and I were surrounded with so much small-town love and grace. We were prayed over and cared for by school staff and parents of classmates and strangers, always reminded that Dad would pull through and this too shall pass. Dad went through 2 treatments of inpatient chemo. He was home waiting for a donor for his bone marrow transplant when I started 7th grade, and Beth was teaching her first year at Springboro Junior High. A few weeks into the first procedure, the nanny my parents hired took their money and ran across the country. Mom and Dad needed to be in Columbus for 6 months. I cannot imagine how my parents were feeling, dealing with cancer, hospitals, trying to find caretakers for their daughters, and of course, there was no FMLA. I clearly remember the day Beth called me down to her music stand in choir class. She mentioned the letter that my parents had sent around to our teachers, stating that if they could not find a suitable situation for my sister and I, we would be relocated to Pittsburgh to live with my aunt for the next 6 months. Right on the spot, she said, I'm willing to help you in this situation. I would like to call your mom and dad about doing what I can for you and your sister. As my dad says, Beth rescued our family in our time of need, and she did so as a volunteer. She became a second mom to 2 stressed out, emotional, and dramatic teenage girls. My memories of Beth running our household include lots of love with her dogs and ours, scheduling and carpools to get us to our many activities, and most importantly, always comforting us when we were struggling. Beth taught us to persevere calmly and with love. And listening to Jerry play the trumpet to the moon in the backyard always helped as well. Beth took us to church with her. We became part of the choirs where the prayer and support for our family grew into a lifetime of memorable experiences. We went with her to Wednesday night rehearsals, and at first we did our homework in the pews, but later joined her choirs, the youth group, and the bell choirs. It became a home with consistent love that only God can give us in a time when we really need it. For the next 4 years, I was privileged to spend months preparing for those summer tours. Our celebration tour choir was immersed in performance, praise, fundraising, friendships, travel with Beth, Jerry, and dozens of families from surrounding towns. Each year we had a different show and adventured to a different region of the country for about 2 weeks. Before every performance, we warmed up with hymns, shared smiles, and prayer. I remember Beth saying, even if we only reach one person, we can inspire that one person in our audience to love themselves, love others, and be loved by Jesus. When I was in high school, Beth moved from the junior high to the high school. In the 90s, we were not allowed to have more than one study hall or leave school if we had plenty of credits. So many students took choir every year. Seniors might have even had it twice a day. I believe my junior year of high school was the first musical, Oklahoma. I can speak for many people in the classes of 94 through 96, and Beth's ability to teach, coach, and guide students up onto the big stage. She literally pulled a whole cast and crew from a few choir classes. Seeing her turn those tough football players into tender actors has always been one of the best memories from that time. Beth's willingness to embrace teenagers, their opinions, their ideas, and their turmoils, and in turn create beauty and togetherness is part of her legacy. I cannot speak enough about the impact Beth has had on my life. I cannot put into words what the ringing of her giggle means to me. Sometimes laughing together, and sometimes her gentle, you can't be serious tone. For me, Beth defined the meaning of taking the good with the bad, of taking a good look at yourself in the mirror. For me, Beth defined the meaning of taking the good with the bad, of taking a good look at yourself in the mirror and carrying forward with love. Other memories of Beth from those days consist of her many patterned, long, flowing dresses and her CRX filled with stacks and stacks of sheet music. Most memorable and most remarkable was her stoic and graceful way of gaining the attention of so many young minds with the strike of a piano key and a gentle hum. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry. My name is Jordan Connect, and I was a student of Beth Jamison's from 2006 to 2010. It's very surreal to be standing on this stage today. Sorry. As the last time I recall being on it was the spring musical of 2010. And before coming out to speak, I was walking around the choir room and a lot of the various rooms back there, and just a flood of positive memories came back to me. And just the pure happiness that this place has in my life, as well as many other people and students that were at Beth Jamison's. I went back into the shop room, and I vividly remember senior year, Miss J asking us to write on the walls memories of things that we had and things that we wanted to come true in the future. And it's weird seeing all the positive messages still there to this day. I thought they would have been scrubbed or washed off, and they weren't. And I just hope Miss J knows that those positive messages are coming true today. I owe much of who I am today because of the lessons that Miss J taught me. And I know many students feel the same way. I first met Miss J in my formative years when I was in junior high. It was in fall of 2005 of 8th grade year. And the reason I met her was because, much like many junior high kids, I was being bullied endlessly for absolutely no reason, and it made no sense. And I was struggling trying to understand why. Was it something to do with the arts? Is it something I should even pursue doing in the future? Because I didn't want to feel that pain. And Miss J had a funny way of always instilling confidence in people. And one of the things that she did was she had John White, who was a rising star of the stage here, who was a junior at the time, come down and mentor me. And I remember John was spending some time with me that spring in 2006, and he said, just wait till you get to high school. It's not going to get much better on the bullying side of things, but I can tell you Miss J is really going to help you, and she's going to instill confidence. And that's one of the many ways that Miss J would find to touch people in their lives. She wouldn't always do it directly. She would find indirect ways to put people in your path and in your life to help shape you and make you better. During those formative years, let's say freshman and sophomore year of high school, I learned a lot. You know, John said that she was going to be intense, and she was. And the best way of putting it was that she found ways to just make us better. Whether it was scaring us randomly and saying, hey, I need you to sing a solo today in front of 30 people in choir, and you're like, I'm sorry, wait, what? You had to do it because Miss J would just look at you with that intensity and say, no, you're doing this right now. And many of those lessons still carry today, such as being on stage right now giving this speech. But one of my favorite things Miss J taught me was a sense of wonder. Many of you were able to travel the world with her on trips. I was lucky to do so with some of my family and friends in 2008 when we went to China. And I sat next to her on the, whatever it was, 21-hour flight on the way there and back, and she just constantly kept telling me, you know, someday you're going to continue to see the world. And I thought it was crazy back then that we were going to go to China, which was just on the other side of the world, but somehow, some way, shape, or form, she made it happen. The tail end of my high school career, much like many of you sitting here, Miss J breathed so much life into myself and my peers. And to this day, I still feel those lessons. But it didn't just stop in high school. When I left high school, when I was in college, I was struggling with who I wanted to be or what my career was going to be, because for so long I felt musical theater and being on stage was, I guess, who I was supposed to be. But it didn't feel that way when I was in college. And I remember coming home during many Christmas and Springboros and just picking her brain. And she was always there to give a guiding hand and say, you know, many of the lessons you've learned doesn't necessarily mean that needs to be your career, but you can take those skill sets and apply it in other areas to continue to share God's love and Jesus' message throughout the world, or even in your career and whatever you choose. I thought that many of those lessons would end around then, and that I would leave a lot of this in the past in high school. But Miss J, as always, found another way to impact my life. And I remember when I came home from college, my senior year in 2013, I was so frustrated because, as many of you have gone through horrible breakups, you just felt, I'll never find the one. I'll never find the person who should be in my life. And Miss J just happened to know the right person. During Christmas in Springboro, she sat me down and said, well, you know Kelly Duvik, don't you? And I'm like, no. She goes, she was in choir with you. Do you not pay attention to anything? Like, hey, you're not wrong. I was a high school boy. I didn't pay attention to much of anything. And she just kept encouraging me and prodding me and said, you need to reach out to her. I know her family and your family. You guys will love each other and it'll work out. And it just breaks my heart that the last time I saw Miss J was at my wedding in 2016 with that girl. Who's in the crowd? My wife, Kelly, I love you. It's all because of Miss J. And she will continue to find ways to impact each and every one of you in your lives for the many years to come. And I'll wrap this up, with a quote by Victor Hugo, who wrote Les Mis, and he said, to love another person is to see the face of God. And as we all know, Miss J taught us how to love, and because of that, we've seen the face of God. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeff Runge, and the first thing I need to do is, Dr. Malone, thank you for recalling that story. I'm backstage saying, I know what he's saying, I know where this is going, and I remember that day so well, and I still laugh about that one, so thank you very much. In 1996, I began teaching in Springboro, and this is when I met Beth, or Miss J, as everyone affectionately knows her as. And we worked together since that time, even through her retirement and return to Springboro, followed by my retirement, and through Beth, my return to Springboro, where I'm honored and amazed at these fabulous students from the Springboro High School choirs, and also the honor and privilege of working with Mrs. Leslie Sharkey. I did not know in 1996 what an impact that she would have on me as a teacher, a mentor, and a friend. We had a bond that was almost immediately because we both loved musicals. We'd talk endlessly about what shows we loved, what would be fun to do. She never agreed to do Tommy. That's the one I wanted to do, and she never agreed on that one. So we would talk about that endlessly, and just about anything you could think of when it comes to musicals. And I've had the privilege of playing drums on almost every musical since 1996, which was the Into the Woods. And full disclosure for all of you alumni, you current students, somehow I was always able to find out what musical we were doing way before anyone else knew. So it's a gift. I miss my time with her. We always, again, just had a great bond. She's always there for help and support every step of the way. And she bailed me out many times around Christmas when I needed to finish shopping for my wife, Sally. Yarn and Mary Kay will fill up a Christmas stocking really fast. But what I want to talk about most of all, Beth was always a champion of her students, whether it was in the classroom or on the stage. She radiated confidence in others to shine bright on the stage, only to find a place for herself out of the lights, cheering at a distance. That's Beth. One memory lives with me and illustrates Beth's gift in a truly special message. And my apologies to the people up here. You've heard this story. We talked about it in class once. But initially, when I came to Springboro, one of my roles was to work with the junior high choir, where I was the assistant director and sometimes accompanist. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm no Leslie Sharkey. And then the accompanist that Dr. Harver was able to bring on board, Dick Harver, I was no Dick Harver either, but I held my own. I did okay. But Beth's confidence in her others and her ability to raise everyone up is truly a special gift. There is one day that sticks with me forever, and that's the junior high music assembly. All the choirs were going to sing for the entire student body. On the way to the performance, so we're in the choir room, across the hall to the gym, which is about 10 steps. Beth looks at me and says, "Oh yeah, we're singing this one today," and handed me the music for Mariah Carey's Hero. I looked at Beth, I said, "Beth, I've never played this before." She paused and looked at me and simply said, "You'll be fine." And then, has been illustrated for, she just turned and walked away. And I'm standing there, a little nervous, a little irritated, but I'm standing there, and I'm like, okay. And I walked across to the gym for the performance, and as we approached the last song, which I've never played, I put my trust in Beth, and she was right. I was fine. The choir sang beautifully, and at that moment, I really realized it wasn't about Beth or myself. It was about the students. We were all fine, and we will be fine. So, thank you, Beth.
The choir sang that song, You Raised Me Up, at their fall concert this year. So it's meaningful on a few levels. It was one of Miss Jamison's favorite songs, and it was also directed them. But the words are what really represent how much she encouraged every one of us and to be more than we could be. I am Leslie Sharkey. My name is Leslie Sharkey, and I've been the accompanist and assistant choir director with Ms. Jamison here at Springboro High School since 2007. My first year here, 2007-8, showed me how big Beth liked to do things. In the year alone, we did major fundraisers like a silent auction at Christmas in Springboro, a swing dance at Pizzanella's Pizza. Beth and I hosted a group called the Young Americans who came from out of town and held a 3-day singing and choreography workshop for students from the elementary through high school. We did a musical, Kiss Me Kate, that year, and then over spring break, Jordan referred to the trip that we took choir students and some parents to Shanghai and Beijing, China. We performed at places like the Great Wall and the Forbidden City. Every year after that was filled with more big activities. Working with Beth was like being on an exciting ride, not quite like a roller coaster, maybe more like the Scrambler, where you're hanging on for dear life. But we had a great time together. Every morning in the office together, we would laugh and have great time planning, sometimes debating, definitely laughing and enjoying talking about our students. I was so privileged to be able to watch her teach. She was creative, spontaneous. Her vocal warm-ups with the class often involved them moving around, silly words, sometimes getting to know each other activities. When she chose songs for the class, she considered what would be best for the students, what she wanted them to experience through the songs. Sometimes the students didn't like her song choices, but she usually won them over, or occasionally we would ceremoniously dispose of the song. She loved putting the classes into groups, which she called families, because relationships were really what mattered most to her. Many of our students, current and past, have written sentiments that you can see on Beth's Facebook, and some are posted outside. If you go into the choir room today, when you walk into the room on the right side of the wall, there are sentiments that our students wrote on the day that she passed away. There's also an album back in the Commons area that's many alumni. We did a 25-year scrapbook for her back in 2016 for all of her musicals and choir years, and so a lot of alumni signed it then, and then they're continuing to sign the scrapbook that's back in the Commons area. And if you are an alumnus or current student, make sure that you sign something back there. But I asked the students this past week to give me a one-word description of Ms. Jamison or a phrase that comes to mind when they think of her. Many said the word inspirational. Some said passionate, amazing, loving. A couple said a bright light, and one person said chili or green beans. So if you ever been in choir, you should know the chili or green bean story. And if you were not in choir, you can ask somebody for that. And I also asked if they had any anecdotes to share. There were lots of responses, which I can't share them all, but I will share a few of them, anecdotes or just memories of Ms. Jamison. Here are a few of the things that the students told me this week. One student said, Ms. J told me that she knew I would grow up to do great things. She's inspired me to continue with performing arts after high school. Another one said, she would always tell stories about her life. She knew what was wrong without you ever having to tell her. She truly cared about all of us like we were her own children. Another one said she cared about what was going on in our lives, even the little things like passing a driver's test or going somewhere fun for a trip. From a chamber choir student, during musical last year, I was stressed and walking through the halls. Miss J came around the corner with a big smile on her face, and if I asked if I was doing okay, I felt better, feeling like someone cared more about the students than the musical. She still helped produce great musicals, but not at the expense of her students' health and happiness. Another comment, how happy she was about my grandpa's hubcaps for Grease. Anybody that's worked on a musical with Beth would know how that would make her happy. Another one, she always believed in me. No matter what I was auditioning for, she always was certain I'd get the role. A senior said, she told me how proud she was of me after I auditioned for jazz choir and went on and on about how impressed she was and told me that I should sing in college. Because of her, I planned to be involved in choirs in college. And then finally, a student said this: when I think of Miss J, I think of her standing in front of us on stage during a concert. She is serious and directing us through the song. She makes vowel sounds with her mouth or makes up a movement to help us remember the next word. The whole time she is focused, but when we are done and the music stops, she is beaming with pride and is just proud of us. So true. I love all these things about Beth, too, that they mentioned. The main thing I love about Beth was our faith in God that we shared in our salvation that we have through his son, Jesus. That is what really drew us together as great friends. At the beginning of each school year, Beth would say to me, we need to go in the classroom before the students would arrive and pray over the room and pray for all the students that are going to come into our room this year. And we would do that every year. Because of this faith that she had in Jesus and this faith that I have, I'm comforted to know where she is. I told the students on the day she passed away that even though we're crying and we miss her every day, that we know that she is the happiest she's ever been, and that's what brings us comfort. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Good evening. I'm Katherine Hollister, and I'm a senior in choir. I'd like to take a few minutes to explain the impact Miss J had on the Springboro Music Department. Miss J was more than just our choir teacher. She wasn't the sort of teacher that you saw once a day in a class period, left, didn't think about her for the rest of the day, and then never saw her again at the end of the school year. That's not how choir is. Choir is not just a class, it's a family, and she made it that way. You spend years in a class with someone, you tend to form an attachment with them. We were all really close to Miss J, and she was close to each one of us too.
Hi guys, my name is Bridget Rhodes, and I actually almost never took choir. So coming into my freshman year of high school, I remember being torn on whether I should take an art class or choir. I only had room for one, so it was a pretty big decision, and I stressed over it, maybe a little more than I should have, but thankfully my sister convinced me to try choir, and I would never have wanted it any other way. So choir at Springboro, as you heard from everyone else, is more than a class, it's a family. Every time I've made the long trek to the back of F. Hall Waker class, I've been welcomed by Miss J, Miss Sharkey, and all of my best friends.
Hello everyone, I'm Bella Ressa. First, on behalf of the whole choir, I would like to thank Mrs. Sharkey. Thank you for being strong through us for this hard time when you're hurting as well. And thank you to Mrs. Clark and Mr. Runge, who have helped us keep singing as Miss J would want us to do. Miss J was one of the greatest people I have ever met, and I don't say that lightly. I will forever thank God for lining up our paths and placing her in my life. As a teacher and director, it's indisputable that Miss J was insanely talented. Because of Miss J, hundreds upon hundreds of students found their voices. So many students have pursued careers in the arts because of Miss J and her guidance. But it never mattered how good of a singer or actor you were, Miss J wanted you on this stage.
Hi everyone, my name is Cole. I'm sure all of you have heard of Miss J or at least talked to, but I want to share my story here. I believe the best way to tell you what kind of person Miss J is to tell you my first day of choir. I was a freshman in high school who had taken choir in junior high and done show choir, so I was feeling pretty up there. So yeah, you show choir kids, you know what I'm talking about. With all that in mind, I took the long walk from downstairs E all the way to Ath Holloway. Two ladies walked into the room, one being Miss Sharkey. She goes over and sits down at her piano. Miss J comes, sits down, and says, "Okay, good morning, children." It was 7 in the morning. I was starting to have second thoughts. So we did the usual choir thing. We stood up, we warmed up, and we sang.
We are the chamber ensemble from Springboro High School, and we'll be singing The Music of Stillness by Elaine Hagenberg.
There will be rest.
Is this on? Okay. That was Sam DeRosa, and he was playing The Orphan by Louis Strebog, which happens to be the same piano piece that he played at his senior choir concert. My name is Audrey Walters, and Sam and I both graduated in 2018. Sam is one of the most amazing people I knew in high school, and he loved Miss J so much. Miss J also loved Sam with such a passion, like she did all of her students. She always wanted to see the best in every student she ever taught. Sam and Miss J had a great dynamic, and he always loved asking her about the musicals, past and future. He was also in 3 of the 4 musicals in high school. Lucky for me, I was in all of those musicals with Sam. Miss J never put any limit on who could be in her shows. Unlike most other schools, where every student that's interested in being in the spring musical has to try out and wait and see if they got cast, Miss J never cut anyone. If you wanted to be in the show, you simply signed up for the ensemble and showed up. You didn't have to be in choir, and you didn't have to know how to sing or dance. You were just there because you wanted to be. If you wanted to try out, great. Or if you didn't want to try out, sometimes she made you because she knew you'd regret not doing it, and she wanted to push you outside of your comfort zone. For me, as an example, I had never been in a proper musical, and my friends that I danced with were signing up to be in Shrek my freshman year, so I signed up as well. But I was very scared of Miss J, but I worked up the nerve to ask her if she needed a specifically short dancer to be paired to dance with Farquaad, who was on his knees the entire show. And she said, yeah, I think you could do that. And the rest is history. But that was one of the most special things about Miss J. She gave everyone a place where they belonged, and she was a safe place and a cheerleader for anyone who stepped through those choir doors. I believe that she saved lives and changed so many for the better, and we were all her children. Miss J was always level-headed and straight to the point. For some of us, high school can be some of the most dramatic years of our life, especially with us theater kids. Miss J was always so funny when it came to the dramatics of day-by-day choir periods. She would be sympathetic and offer guidance to things that were going on, but she would not entertain something that was too trivial to be fought about. She was notorious for making the involved parties of the drama sit down and talk their conflict over in the choir office. This was especially prominent over musical season. But even though the musical could be a time filled with drama, it was really the best time of every school year. Oh, how I loved going to musical practice. I loved getting to walk in and see Mrs. Sharkey in the choir office getting last-minute things together, and her telling me Miss J was already in the auditorium waiting for us. During the weekends we would perform the show, Miss J would always be sitting backstage, stage left, right over here. She kept things running smoothly, but also when things went wrong, she let it roll off her back. Like a prop flying into the pit during Grease Lightning last year, or someone's mic not turning on for their line in doctor's orders, she made sure all of her kids were doing okay throughout the show. I remember when I was a dancer in Catch Me If You Can, I came off the stage feeling nauseous. But I had to move fast and get through to a quick change and get back on stage. Someone told Miss J I wasn't feeling well, and I was immediately presented with a can of Sprite. And an encouraging Miss J came up to me, making sure I was okay to go on for the next song. I hear that as we all would perform in our big group numbers during the musicals, she would be tearing up in the wings with pride in all of us. If I haven't made it clear, she was the best. Now, as we begin the process for this year's show, as we do Oklahoma again, it's hard not to feel like there's something missing when I walk in and don't see her sitting front row, right over there. But the show must go on, and we do this for her, and we do this because of her, and I would not be the person I am if I was not for her. But she is so loved, and I'm so blessed to have known her for so much of my life. I think I can speak for everyone when I say that we miss her more every second. And we thank her for all she ever did for us. And as I read through this, I keep thinking of all the things I could say and all the stories I could tell, because there are some funny ones. But I can never express the gratitude of who Miss J is, was, and always will be.
I'm Mantha, this is my sister Xandra, and my mom Beth, or as we were always collectively called, the Daigle Girls.
Every person here has a memory, a story, or just a moment when Beth touched their lives. She was my friend. The first time I met her was in 2009 on my first trip to New York with her. My daughter was a freshman. Watching Beth with the kids and her handling of situations, she was very intimidating. The second trip I went on with Beth was to Ireland, Scotland, the choir tour in 2011. She still kind of scared me a little, and for those of you that know me, I'm not scared of a lot. I managed to make it through 3 to 4 dinners without sitting next to her because she made it a point to sit next to most of the parents. I just sat down to the 4th dinner when she came up to me and said, "Beth Daigle, you're going to sit with me tonight. Get your stuff." I walked to her table without managing to pee myself, but man, was I not prepared for that. After dinner, Beth smiled at me and said, "Beth Daigle, I think we're going to be good friends." And we were. She always called me Beth Daigle whenever we saw each other out and about. She'd be, "Hi, Beth Daigle," just because I guess we were both Beth. On the trip, I also met the standard to which every other male in my life will always be held, the most patient man in the world, Beth's Jerry. He dealt with some very interesting individuals on that trip, and I would run and hide from him and them, and he managed to just stay calm the whole time. He also helped, Xander and I helped with about 9 or so musicals. She always managed to give us some crazy thing that she needed built at the last minute. She had us turn a sheep from a polar bear because she decided she needed a sheep for a musical, and she told us 3 weeks beforehand, and that was the year there were no sheep anywhere. No ceramic sheep, no stuffed sheep, nothing. So with some hot glue and some duct tape, we managed to make a sheep out of a polar bear. And then she had us come up with a mouse, and we made that out of a remote control car and a lot of fake fur. And then she also had us make the hairspray cans that some of you may still have from Hairspray. I've watched a lot of kids come through her music room. A lot of kids have been involved in musical, athletes, band kids, student class presidents, kids from all groups. And even though I tease them every year about their choir circle that they have right before they go on every show, I've watched every child tell her and tell each other how much that musical meant to them and how they all felt included and cared about, and it was probably the best experience that they ever had throughout high school.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna share something now. My first experience with Miss J was back in the 2011 choir trip to Ireland and Scotland. I was in junior high at the time, but I helped with the fundraising, and if you guys remember, that was a time before smartphones and technology, and I happened to have an iPod Touch. So they took that to Ireland and Scotland, and as soon as they landed, it was about 3 a.m. back here. We get a notification on our home computer going off that someone is Skyping us, full volume. And we walked to the computer, 3 a.m., my dad and I, second day of spring break, and it's just the entire choir screaming because they had landed and gotten off the plane in Ireland. And we were their only connection back to the US. So every day at odd hours of the night, they would be Skyping us, and I would be half awake, be like, "Hi, what's up, guys?" I don't know any of the kids in that high school except for my sister, and they're still there, and Miss J every time is like, "Hi, Xandra," and I'm like, "Hi, Miss J." But when I got to high school, she was always the most supportive person of me, like helped me decide to go into the arts and continued to pursue that in Chicago. And even though she couldn't come to any of my shows up there, she always had my mom or my sister, whoever was there at the time, kind of illegally record it to either like live stream it back to her or film it and send it to her later because she wanted to see it so bad. So she was always super supportive, even if she couldn't be there in person.
And one of the best things that Beth ever did was travel. And because she loved her kids and her love of travel, I've been given the gift to go onto some amazing places and see some amazing things. I've watched kids sing Mass at the Vatican. I've seen them perform in some of the most beautiful castles in the world. We would go and see some great shows together when we went to New York, and even though we went many times, there was always somewhere she'd say, "Hey, have you gone here?" And we'd go, and it was always just something new with her. I was friends with Beth outside of the choir and outside of here. I made some great friends from her through the Woolly Bully. One of them, her husband, passed away. Her son was a student of Beth's, and he called me the day his dad passed away, and I called Beth and I said, first words out of her mouth are, "We need to go see Carlene." And we went and we sat, and we were just there to be with her because that's who Beth was. I'd often find her and Jerry in the summers down at North Park at the concerts or seeing the show that was being put on there. Tuesday evenings were for sit and knit, and all our friends at the Woolly Bully, and even though I myself do not knit, it was more sit and gossip. But it was just always a good time. Beth was a creative, thoughtful, caring, fun, stubborn, incredibly stubborn, adventuresome woman, and I loved her very much, and she was my friend, and I miss her.
Hello, I'm, excuse me, Jerry, the most patient person in the world, I think she said. And I've been thinking for a month of what to say, and I gave up. And I met Beth when I was 19, and somehow I wound up playing a trumpet in her church, and I live about over an hour from here, and the church that she was doing music ministry in was over an hour from where I live, and I wound up, that's where I met her. And I played the trumpet, and I remember after the church service, she said, "You're not reading any music, are you?" And I said, "No, I'm not." I thought I was in trouble, because I knew she was a music teacher. And she says, "What's going through your mind when you play?" And I said, "Well, thankfully, not a whole lot, really." And anyway, I don't think she was very interested in me at all, except for that. And the next week, I was playing in Oklahoma, in a school not far from where I live. And she wanted to come hear me play. And she came over to hear me at Oklahoma. And at the time, I didn't own a car, and here she come. I didn't think she'd come. And there she was, and she watched me play. Like, her eyes were just like staring at, not me, but the trumpet. What's he doing? What's going on? And then afterwards, I thought, I wonder if she'll take me home. I wonder if she'll take me home. I don't have a car. I wonder if she'll take me home. And then I remembered who she was. I'd seen her before. And when I was 16 or 17, I was in the concert choir. And before a concert choir concert one night, our assistant director, or student director, Carol Mextroth, came down to get us ready to start the choir concert. And here was someone else right behind her. And to us guys, we were back in the back row, and we were just cutting up, having a big old time. And here comes Carol Mextroth, and then another person behind her. And they looked like Farrah Fawcett. And to us, when we saw, they had a Farrah Fawcett hair and a glow above their hair, and their feet weren't even on the ground, and somehow they came into the room and went before us, and we just all just kind of straightened up. And I think they went right in front of us and hovered and went right out there. They went through the wall, I think, is the way I remember it, just like that. But after that concert, or after that musical, Beth and I sat in her car. and we talked about our relationship with the Lord. And I didn't expect that, and she didn't either. And we talked till probably 3 in the morning about that. And from then on, we did 15 years or 14 or 15 years of ministry together. I taught the Bible, and she did all the rest. The best leader I've ever seen. And today I'm looking out, and I'm seeing a meeting of some people in Beth's life as far as the way she affected people spiritually in that early day, and then the way she affected people here, which was also spiritually as well. And I wanted to just convey a couple things that you may not know about Beth that she would have never told you. Shortly after we started going out, and just mostly our going out was teaching a Bible study or doing something with Celebration Singers, or I would go down to Hamilton where she was a school teacher. She taught deaf kids music. That was her first music class. And so my life and her life, it kind of came together. And then we started going on these tours. She started taking these tours of Celebration Singers and going all these places, and I was always there. I mean, wherever Beth was, I was there. And I want to share with you something that you may have not known about the deep faith that she had in Jesus. And it's easy in a school setting to watch the pictures and watch the amazing talent she has to direct and how she has led people. But it would be a real mistake to think that she did that on her own, because she didn't. I watched her always know where she was going. She always knew where she was going, what the next move was. And sometimes we'd be in the car for 8 hours going someplace. And she'd be thinking about the musical, and we might not even say a word. And she'd be going through different musicals in the car. And I knew she was processing, but gaining insight. And then all of a sudden it would click, and I'd see that look on her face. It would just click. This is the one. This is the one. And then shortly after, of course, she would explain that wherever she was at. What is the musical? What's the next step? Beth always knew where she was going. And it's something I learned from her. Never got it right, but I learned from her that to know what God has designed you to be and to set that trek forward and not let anybody keep you from it, to make sure you put people around you who are going to support that and help you. I learned that from Beth. And I also learned about love from Beth. You know, there's a chapter in the Bible, 1 Corinthians 13, where it says love is patient and kind. And somehow that word kind just kept going through my mind as I was sitting back here trying not to cry. That word kind, kreshimai, is a word that means you're always benevolent. You always see what another person needs, and you just flow into that. Beth did that. And when you got a hug from Beth, even when she's not even supposed to hug you sometimes, here, when you got that hug, you got a hug from the Lord through her, because she touched people's lives forever. And if I would try to tell you what I think Beth would want me to tell you today, she would not want me to put her on a pedestal. I mean, after the musicals, you know, this would all go on, and all the fire and smoke, and everybody singing and going crazy, and the curtain calls and everything. You never saw Beth, did you? She'd leave because she was always just behind the scenes, and the only thing she cared about was you. She cared about you. Did you have everything you needed to do what you were supposed to do? That's what love is. I watched her do that here and overseas. You may not have known, but Beth traveled overseas a lot. I remember a time in Russia. She was working with Compassion International, and she was involved with a group that I was with called the Continental Singers. And she was working with another girl, Anna Marie, and they were passing out Bibles where? In the Kremlin. In the Kremlin, passing them out. Anna Marie actually got her arm broken. I bet Mrs. Jamison probably doesn't know this. But she's passing out Bibles. And she's talking about how to help children in Russia. And then I took her on one of my tours to Ukraine. And she did the same thing. Her faith was deep, and it's something you may have never seen. And so if I was going to take a stab at telling you what I think she would want me to tell you, it would be love. Not to be, it would be to say, get over yourself. It's not about you. It's about others. Get over yourself. Make sure the difference you make in this world, whether you sing the highest note, whether you go the farthest, you're the fastest, she would say, make sure that your legacy is love, where you flow into the need, And I think she would also want me to say to the students, find out what you are here to do. Find out what you're here to do. And do it. And make sure that the friends around you are friends who will help you do that. That some friends will draw the energy out. Some friends will add to your direction. Because God gives those directions. God equips people to go the direction He wants to go. But it's a choice. And I think she would want me not to talk about her. She would want me to give you a message, best I could. Love. Love. Because if your legacy is only the things that you have done, sang the highest note, did whatever, she would rejoice in that. Reach for the stars, she would say. But if your only legacy is what happens here on this earth, it's a failure. And I want to tell you, Beth's legacy is not left on the earth. It's eternal. It's eternal. And that's the way she lived her life, as a choice. And that's what I would like to convey to you. I probably know her heart more than anybody. And I would just say to you, find out what you're to do, and don't let people get in the way and drag you off with various things. And love people and put together a life that will mean something forever. That's the legacy. That's the legacy of Beth Jamison. Thank you.
You cannot say it any better than that. What a blessing. What a blessing this afternoon has been. You know, you think about the people that you encounter in your life, and sometimes it's easy to take those who are closest to you for granted. And I am so thankful as I've heard the stories and the laughter and the ways that Beth loves so well. Now it's time for you and me to move on. Many of you I've seen here are very young, and much of your life is ahead. And so I hope and pray that you'll take the things we heard today, which I know you will, and now move forward as you live your life. What are the ways that Beth J. loved you that you can now instill in your life, and then see the ways that you're called to pass that on to others? One of the ways also we're continuing the legacy of Beth Jamison, there is a memorial fund, and you can look on the back of the program. And if you feel so led to contribute, I see there's two ways. You can make an online donation, or you can scan the QR code. And again, knowing Beth J, she would say, this is not about me, but it is about continuing the life and the love that she promoted and conveyed so well. Also want to let you know that although these have been incredible blessings as far as the opportunity we've heard from people to share here from the podium, but the sharing will continue and should continue. And one of the ways that'll immediately happen is after our gathering here in the area, I think you call it the common area here, it's going to be refreshments and a time to continue sharing the story. So I want to encourage you to do that as well. And then finally, the choir is going to sing, and wanted to make sure that all of you alumni know that you are not only invited but encouraged to come and be a part of this final tribute, this final song. So at this time, I'll invite the choir and alumni to come forward to prepare to sing the Old Irish Blessing. God bless you in your life going forward as well. And so thank you. Just a reminder that immediately after this, we're going to gather and have some refreshment and time of sharing. So again, God bless you all.